Our leader was surprisingly quiet last night, but I'm ready for a deep run tonight if we never run. Well, if it rains like this, it won't be a problem. Sorry, and we'll stay here and I'll do just together much. Okay, so it's not really bad, but I'm going to celebrate. And like I said, I'm anticipating it's not going to be good. We'll work with it. So membership is transitioning. Is retiring. Alright, so you want to stick together here?
No storm can shake my inmost heart, while to that rock I'm clinging, since love prevails in heaven and earth. How can I keep from
Good morning. It's so nice to see you all here on this lovely rainy morning, but rain is good. I'm Inge Hill, and I've been associated with this lovely place for about 14 years. So I welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Danbury, and you must quiet your phones. I left mine at home. The Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Danbury has been gathering together for 200 years, and to build a more just world, we respectfully acknowledge that our physical building is on the tradition of the Pocasset people. I'm so glad that you were able to join us this morning, because you are an essential part of celebrating. Whether today is your first or your thousandth Sundays in our midst, in person or online, we should be stronger because you are with us here. If you're new to our community or joining online, we invite you to introduce yourself when you are connecting from in a chat box as you are comfortable. At the conclusion of today's service, you will have a chance to participate in a breakout group for individual connections and deeper check-ins. If you are here in person, please fill out the visitor card on the table next to the exit outside before you leave. We are one people of many beliefs, many origins, sexualities, and gender. We are all growing, all are loved, just as you are. You are welcome here.
Is there one announcement?
For the announcements, we have an announcement.
One announcement.
Oh, you want to do that? I'll do the announcement. Yeah. Next Sunday, I'm sorry, I didn't get the announcement. Next Sunday, Marianne Kula will lead the service on Together We Will Find the Way. This service will be an overview of the state of Earth biosphere. We will discuss what our congregation is doing or can do to put things right.
Thank you, Inga. It's now time for us to greet one another, so turn to your left, your right, behind you, in front of you, and warmly greet each other on this rainy morning. I think we could go on for a while. But now, please join me in the hymn of welcome. Come, come, whoever you are, which will be led on screen.
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair.
Now time for our chalice lighting affirmation. I see that I forgot the long candle. Is there a long candle there? Just when you think you've remembered everything. Thank you. Okay. Oh yeah, no, this one's broken.
There isn't another one in here.
Is there another one? There's plenty in the front hall closet. Oh,
Oh, I found
okay.
here.
Speak among each other because I just extinguished instead of lighting. Matches, please.
They are. I don't know. Oh, here they are. We extinguished.
This is how you can mess things up and still be forgiven. That's what UUism is all about. Okay. Now, please join me in the words of our chalice lighting affirmation. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and justice is its light. This is our covenant to dwell together in
peace, to speak the truth in love, to help one another and celebrate life.
And now our unison children's affirmation. Get your UUs way up in the air. We are Unitarian Universalists. We are people with open minds, loving hearts, and helping hands. We care for the earth and each other.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Annie Chanel, and it's good to be together this morning. I come to the subject for today's talk because I was married to a Turkish man. He and I also happened to rent a room to an Ethiopian refugee, a young man who was just out of high school. And so both the Ethiopian refugee and my husband began to teach me about Islam. Islam is the name for Muslims practice the religion of Islam, like Christians practice Christianity, Jews practice Judaism, Muslims practice Islam. They just don't start with the same letter. And I may say Islam, and I just wanted you to know that that's still Muslims. Some background on me is that my parents split up when I was 11 years old, and I went to live with my dad. He became deeply involved in a fundamentalist Christian cult. And because he was there, I was too. I left my dad when I was 16 years old, and I was curious about other religions. So I investigated religion the only way I knew how, which was by dating different people. I didn't know about Unitarian Universalism, or I could have come here and learned it without going through that. So I dated an African from Ghana. I dated a Jew from St. Louis. And eventually I married a Muslim from Turkey. I grew up in Washington, D.C. It's somebody's phone. Yep. I grew up in Washington, D.C., and even though I now live in Connecticut, you will hear me say we when I refer to Washington. It's kind of hard to outgrow that feeling of where you came from. Washington, D.C. is a federal city that until 1974, Congress appointed our mayor. It was quite late when we even got the right to vote for President of the United States. In 1974, we won home rule, which meant that that was the first time that we could elect a city council and our mayor. We still don't have representative in we have a non-voting representative in Congress, and we have nobody in the Senate. that represents us, even though the population of Washington, D.C. is larger than the population of Wyoming and New Hampshire. So I say that because I feel like it'll never change unless people get educated about this. So the motto on our license plates in Washington, D.C. is taxation without representation, because that's what all D.C. residents have. So what happened was in 1974, all of a sudden the city got home rule, and we could teach our children what we wanted them to learn. So lo and behold, 1974 was my first year in high school. And instead of American history, we basically got Black history. But the Black history that I'm going to tell you about today is not the one taught to me in high school, because they didn't include Muslims in their discussion of what Blacks in this country did. So my talk,
Sherry just called me. The slides are in order.
We haven't started the slides.
No, I know, but she would have to go through the slides very fast if you didn't do the story first.
Oh, I'm saying the wrong speech.
Sherry never calls in the middle of the service.
I'm sorry. We're supposed to tell a story now. And this is a good story, and it's my favorite story. Okay. This, I think, is a fascinating story. I'm going to tell you about the very first mosque ever built in the United States. And this surprised me. I had no idea. So, because this is a story for children, children need to know that Christians go to churches, Jews go to synagogues, and Muslims go to mosques, but they're all houses of worship and places where people can pray. Now, the Muslims were here from the very beginning. There were Muslims on Columbus's ships. There were Muslims that came with the Spanish explorers. But most of the Muslims came here in the early days on slave ships from Africa. And later they came here by their own choice. But I want to tell you the story of the very first mosque built in the United States. To do that, I need you to imagine 130 years ago. 130 years ago was before anyone alive was born. My grandmother's mom was still a little girl 130 years ago. And if you're a child today, your grandmother's grandmother's mom was just a little girl. So most people in the United States, and in fact the whole world, had never seen electric light. There were no light bulbs, no internet, no telephones, no radio, no television, no color photography, and no skyscrapers. In 1972, the United States Congress decided to host a World's Fair in Chicago to celebrate the 400th anniversary of Columbus's trip to the Americas. Now, I'm sure that some of you here attended the New York World's Fair in 1964. The World's Fair we're imagining was in 1893. What made this fair special, it was the first time ever that the fair used electric light, and it was all lit up. It must have been a magical place to people who'd never seen electric light before. This fair was the one that introduced the world to Wrigley's chewing gum, Jack in the Box, caramel, and peanuts. The people were able to hear a voice recording for the first time. And this fair featured the very first Ferris wheel ever. It was huge. It was 264 feet tall. It towered above the fairgrounds and all of the city of Chicago. It had 36 covered gondolas that were the size of a train car. It had seats for 40 people and could hold 60. And for 50 cents, you could get a ride twice around. And from the top, you could see all of the city below you. The Ferris wheel marked the beginning of a mile-long street that was called the Midway Plaisance. Plaisance is an old-fashioned word meaning pleasure ground. So this was just a little jutting off from the main fairgrounds. It was over 600 acres of fairgrounds. But this is where they put all the rest of the world. We're on this road. And right below the Ferris wheel, right past the fence, there was a little tiny mosque. It had a single dome and 4 towers, one of which was taller than the others. And this is where the imam climbed to call the faithful Muslims to prayer 5 times a day, at dawn, noon, mid-afternoon, sunset, and evening. 300 Muslims working the fair closed up their stalls when the call to prayer came and went to the mosque to pray. They left their shoes by the front door. This was the first time that many Americans were ever introduced to Islam. Around the corner from the mosque was an entire Middle Eastern city block with small shops selling carpets and pottery and metalworks and tea in tiny glasses, Middle Eastern candy, a theater, a dance hall with belly dancers, and a Bedouin village featuring carpet weavers. There was even a hippodrome, the largest ever built, copied on the one in Istanbul. This one featured specialized military cavalry who displayed mock sword battles, held chariot races, and raced horses. And you could even get camel rides for all of 25 cents and donkey rides for 5 cents. This is me when I was in Turkey on a camel, and the camel behind me is biting my rear end, which is why my face looks as it does. So this mosque and the buildings around it were a gift to America from the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, who at that time lived in what is now Turkey. 27 million people attended this 6-month-long fair. And 27 million people happened to be half the population of the United States at that time. I'm told that this hippodrome popularized the sport of horse racing in America. We owe the Kentucky Derby, the Belmont Stakes, and the Preakness to this hippodrome. When the fair ended after 6 months, it was dismantled and the mosque was torn down. Today, only 2 buildings remain in Chicago of the more than 200 that were built for the fair. These 2 are the Palace of Fine Arts and the World's Congress Auxiliary Building. And so ends the story. Please join me in singing This Little Light of Mine.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
It is now time for our shared milestones. We'll begin with silent milestones. If you have a joy or concern, something weighing on your heart that you do not wish to share aloud, you may come and place a stone in the bowl. Silent reflection. Carl, you want to play a little music? He's been drafted in Jerry's absence, so I don't have to run back and forth from the mic to the piano. Thank you, Carl. Beautiful. There is one more milestone, and it's from Marie Dupree. Keith came home yesterday. We also spread the ashes of my brother and his wife and had a lunch after we celebrated the baby coming in October. She's the granddaughter of Mary and George, whose ashes were spread. And Sally is delighted that Keith is back home, and Margaret is delighted that Keith is back home. And so are Lois and Jerry. Okay, I think we can probably all join our voices. And Keith is out of the hospital. So now, on that note, please join us in the Spirit of Life, our hymn of reflection.
I love that Jerry was able to show up for this service, even though he's on vacation. So my reading today is Article 11 of the Treaty of Tripoli, which was signed by President John Adams in 1797. Obama quoted this passage when he gave a speech in Egypt about
No, offering is after the reading. I am so sorry for interrupting. But you're just standing there.
No problem. We're the leg crew. We're all having this experience for the first time. All the regular people are on vacation. All right, so this is Article 11 that Obama quoted, which was when he spoke in Egypt. This treaty only lasted for 5 years, and this particular article wasn't translated into the Arabic version of the treaty, which is interesting. And there's all kinds of arguments about it, but I love it for what it says and because I think that it's true. As the government of the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion, as it has in itself no character of enmity against the laws, religion, or tranquility of the Mussulman, which is an old-fashioned word for Muslim. And as the said states never entered into any war or act of hostility against any Mohammedan, which is another word for Muslim, nation, it is declared by the parties that no pretext arising from religious opinions shall ever produce an interruption of the harmony existing between the two countries. So when we hear about the founding fathers and what they thought, I think we can keep this in mind. And that is that the government of the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion.
Now it's time for our congregational offering. We had a little tweak that was coming. If you are with us for the first time, your presence here, virtual or actual, is your gift to us. Members gathered here in Fellowship Hall, please express your generosity as our greeters circulate the donation basket. Those online may click a link posted in the chat to make a donation or pledge. You may also mail a check to UUCD at 24 Clapperwood Road in Danbury, 06811. As we create this holy place together, thank each of you for doing your part to support and sustain this community we love.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, the God of our hearts stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
So I took a training with the UUA on an online workshop on Zoom. And I was one of the women that was in our group, happened to be a Muslim lady. And she was a member of her mosque, and she was a member of her UU church and part of the membership committee. And it was lovely to meet her. And so just as a Jew can attend synagogue and still come here and enjoy our beloved community, so can Muslims and pagans and anyone else, as we don't have a creed, we have our 8 principles. And what she told me was that there's no conflict between UU and being a Muslim. They go together. So Wednesday morning, this past week, a Connecticut legislator, Miriam Khan, was attacked here in Connecticut while leaving a prayer service celebrating Eid al-Adha, which is a Muslim holiday which marks the end of the Hajj. I think it's important for us to learn about Muslims in the United States. Between being married to a Muslim and listening to the news, which is often awful, I have questions. What did our founding fathers think of Muslims? When, how, and why did Muslims come here? What are some of the unique gifts we've received from the Muslim faith? Surprisingly, Muslims have been in this country since its founding. Our first international treaty recognized the first country in the world to recognize the United States as a sovereign nation, happened to be the Muslim country of Morocco. And the treaty that we wrote, which is the first treaty ever written by the United States, it remains in effect and it's never been broken. When we had our Muslim ban, it did not include Morocco. Somebody got that straight. And this treaty was very important, as at that time, the United States had no navy, and we no longer had the protection of the British. And so it was a good thing that the Sultan of Morocco agreed to let our ships into the Mediterranean and to protect them. We should also know that Thomas Jefferson had a copy of the Quran in his library. A document I read suggested that he acquired it while he was a law student because he was so fascinated by the law. And he was also a strong advocate for religious freedom. Some Muslims argue that our Constitution was influenced by the Quran in the line that we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Muslims have a direct relationship with God and bow to no one but God. So there's no caste, there's no hierarchy. Yeah, people put it in, like they had the upper class wear a fez, but, people don't wear fezzes anymore because it doesn't match their religion. So Jefferson's insistence on religious freedom means that our Constitution also requires no religious test to hold office. And yes, they argued about that back when they passed our Constitution. but there's no religious test to hold office in the United States. And I think you might be surprised at how much our government wanted to include respect for Muslim thought in our government buildings. So this is a slide of the main chamber in the U.S. Supreme Court. And wrapped around the top of it, you can see that there's a frieze. And on this frieze, there are pictures of 18 of the best lawgivers in history. And among these 18 men is the Prophet Muhammad. He's the third figure to the justice's right. And we have a close-up there. As you may be able to make out, the Prophet holds a copy of the Quran and a sword. Images of the Prophet are a contentious issue for Muslims. The chamber was built in 1935, but the frieze featuring Muhammad didn't become an issue until the 1990s. Supreme Court Justice Rehnquist obtained a fatwa in 1997 to allow the representation of the Prophet Muhammad to remain because it's not a religious icon and not an actual depiction of the man, but meant to honor the Prophet as one of the 18 greatest lawgivers of all time. A fatwa is a scary word. It's Arabic for legal opinion. I was curious to know what that legal opinion said. It's a 26-page document that costs $26 on JSTOR, so I passed on getting it. Until 1955, a Manhattan courthouse also featured a statue of the Prophet Muhammad on its roof, a big, huge, full statue. In that case, it was there honoring him as one of 9 of the greatest lawgivers ever. In 1955, they removed it, and there wasn't anything there until a couple of months ago when they put up a temporary gold statue of a female figure, which is called Now. And it's still there if you happen to go to Manhattan, but it'll be moved. It's meant to be temporary. In the US Congress, we find a relief portrait plaque of Suleiman the Great over one of the entrances to the House of Representatives. And as you can see, there are 435 representatives, and they all have to meet in this building several times a day, and they need to be able to get into that room and out of the room quickly. So there's many doors. And I drew a little tiny red line next to where the profile of Suleiman the Great is. But it's right above the door where they walk in. Do our representatives know that a Muslim man is above their heads as they enter the chamber? He is honored here as being among 23 of the greatest lawmakers in history. And these people include the Pope, Thomas Jefferson, and George Mason. This morning, I told you a story about the first mosque, and I just wanted to include a picture of the oldest mosque in America. This one is in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and the building was started in 1929 and finished in 1934. And there is an older congregation, which is the Dearborn, Michigan congregation, but their mosque, they met in a building in the Ford plant, and then they built their own mosque later. And it happens to be the largest mosque in America. So when we wonder about where Muslims live in America, this is from the 2010 census. And this is the second most popular religion in the country. And so the green areas are Muslim. The light green is B'nai B'rith. The pink is Jewish. And the yellow is Buddhist. So why is the South and the Midwest have so many Muslims? You can go back to the African country. All right. So this is a map of the spread of Islam. And so the brown is from 750 and the yellow is 1500. And as you know from the poem, Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492. So 1500 is when the slaves started being brought here. And you can see that a huge portion of Africa was actually Muslim at that time. And in fact, there was a university in Timbuktu, in the country of Mali, that trained people. So some of the slaves that were brought here were basically university educated, literate, able to speak, read, and write Arabic, trained to manage people, to run government. So not everybody was, as I was taught, some savage from Africa. Good 20 to 40% were Muslim. They had a common language they weren't allowed to speak, and a love of religion that they weren't allowed to practice. And some were more educated than the masters who owned them. The call to prayer, called 5 times a day, is lyrical. It's in Arabic. And the people were used to hearing this message 5 times a day. So when you're out in the field working, they weren't allowed to speak Arabic, but they could sing in the same way as the prayer. And so that is how the blues were started. And if you notice, the cadence of the blues is very different than the songs maybe in Appalachia or other parts of the US. And it's directly given to us by Islam. So today in the postlude, we'll play a video of one such song, which is from the islands off the coast of Georgia. And I ran out of time when I was writing this, so there was a lot more I wanted to say. And perhaps I can give the second part of my talk on the August 13th that doesn't have a subject yet. So what I want to do is there are men, and I'll call them special men, who were able to keep their faith despite being slaves. And their stories, I think, are fascinating. How they held on to their faith despite the odds, and how they advocated for their own freedom. And so rather than tell you their story now, I thought I would show you their pictures, and maybe I can be your speaker on August 13th and tell you their whole stories. So we have, the first one is Omar bin Said, who was born in Senegal in 1770, and he's wearing a fez. And he ruled 450, he managed 450 slaves. He built 3 churches in his lifetime. And so all the churches faced Mecca, and every grave he dug faced Mecca. The next one is Yera Mahmoud, and this painting is done by Charles Wilson Peale in 1819. And then we have Ayuba Suleiman Diallo, and this picture was done by William Hoare in 1733. And the last one is Ibrahim Abd al-Rahman, and that etching was done by Henry Inman. And so I hope that I have broadened your idea about Muslims, about Blacks, about this country. And so this concludes the message for today. And Nancy will lead us in extinguishing the chalice.
Thank you, Annie. Please join me in the words for extinguishing our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world until we are together again. Join us in our hymn of celebration, We'll Build a Land.
We'll build a land where we bind up the broken. We'll build a land where the captives go free, where the oil of gladness dissolves all mourning. Oh, we'll build a promised land that can be. Come build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. We'll build a land where we bring the good tidings to all the afflicted and all those who mourn, and we'll give them garlands instead of ashes. Oh, we'll build a land where peace is born. Come build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. We'll build a land building up ancient cities, raising up devastations from mold, restoring ruins of generations. Oh, we'll build a land of people so bold. Come build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. Come build a land where the mantles of praises resound from spirits once faint and once weak, where like oaks of righteousness stand her people. Oh, come build the land, my people we seek. Come build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream.
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. This is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again, come. These are the words of a Muslim man. Rumi, he wrote them in 1272, and it's one of our favorite hymns. So I just wanted to show you that we have a gift ourselves from the Muslims. And now I want, as a prelude, to show you this song, which is the one that people say are the closest song to the call for prayer. And this is Levy Camp Holler.
Well, she ain't nothing but a downtown old money waster. I'm gonna have to let her go. Whoa, she ain't nothing. Whoa, she ain't nothing. Whoa, but a down old town money waster. Boy, I'm gonna have to let her go. Lord, I'm gonna knock her down and stomp her, beat her with my bone. Whoa, walking down the levee with my head hanging low, thinking about my easy rider boy. She don't live here no more, Lord. Whoa, boy, she can't stay here no more. If you want your daughter to look like mine, Papa, them, whoa, now long, whoa, stocking with the seam behind. I'm away up early, whoa, in the morning, boy, before I go, I'ma tell my, whoa, he's a rider, I'll live here no more. Well, went down to the, whoa, come on, whoa, Sarah 11, come back screaming and crying. I couldn't pay for them old brand feature that who've been buying. Whoa, let my wheel mule cripple and my lead mule blind. Can't pay, but I'm rising Simon that gap and bind. Want your G? Whoa, back Charlie, want you hold back Sam? You ain't pull a pound and I'm on out cloud. Whoa, whoa, good morning, Captain, how you feeling, shine? I don't want no trouble, I want my whole back time.